Yeah, it's funny, like I've travelled around the world my whole life trying to get away from Wales, and after the pandemic I've ended up and found myself back in Wales, and I was drawn to it because no matter where I've been to in the world, there was just something about it. Nothing felt quite like home. I grew up on a farm in hills, so I was running up and down the hills all day long, every day long, not as a way to keep fit, but because I enjoyed just running and jumping in the trees. Absolutely, the lifestyle. The lifestyle was great. It was outdoors, fresh air. It was wonderful. It's funny, back in the day, birthday parties were banned at my place because everyone would come to my house and they would break their arms or legs. We had ambulances 2 years in the trot from my mates breaking their arm or either their leg because they were trying to run and jump and do all the mountain biking and jumps on the bikes that we did, downhill, off-road, trail running. So growing up, my fitness was, I just took it for granted, and I did so for a number of years. It led into my sports as well. I was playing football, rugby, cricket. But then when later life sets in and you start the world of work and family and all that other things that get in the way, I kind of lost that fitness.
So you spent a couple of seasons snowboarding again in Austria. Did that, getting back to the mountains, reignite your love for the outdoors?
Yeah, absolutely. So having not done snowboarding for a while and having focused on my strength training, you realise that the stuff you enjoy and fitness that you enjoy, for me, is particularly being outdoors in the mountains. And I spent a lot of time out there in very harsh conditions. I was out in Tyrol in Austria, St Anton, Ischgl sort of areas for those who are skiing and snowboarders. Oh, and the radio's come back on. That's what happens in the mountains of Wales. Random sporadic radio stations. So being out there reignited my passion for it, and it wasn't until I came back home to visit mum and dad that I realised actually I've been chasing the mountains and everything around the world, but it's actually stuff back home in Wales that reminds me of being in the mountains and stuff I really enjoy, and that's why I moved back to Cardiff. And then wanted to explore the mountains of Wales a little bit more, and this is where Vivos and their Barefoot boots came into play. It's like I was able to use them more. My trackers had come around me all over the world, particularly in Austria. They were my day-to-day shoes that I use all the time. So this is why I wanted to come out here today into the mountains of Wales and different places around Bettws and Snowdonia to really give the forest trackers a good run for their money and a good test. Because I think the terrain around here is pretty epic and it's pretty varied, to say the least. Funny, Bettws reminds me of the Alps, of being in Ischgl or St Anton. It's like one of the prettiest villages up here in North Wales. That's why it's so popular, to be honest. But yeah, it's just like an alpine village. I think that's the best way to describe it. Just kind of cool. So it's kind of perfect here, kind of like from being in the mountains, coming out here, and the terrain around here. It's a mixture of stuff. You've got easy trails, like around here, and then about 20 minutes up the road, you've literally got the mountains of Snowdon and the more extreme terrain to go with here, which is kind of perfect to test out the boots.
Test drive on both?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting. Like my collection of boots in here now is funny. You can see all my Vivos and my non-Vivos at the back here. This is the shoes I carry with me every day almost. The trackers, these trackers, I think it's the best one. These are my original pair. They've been around the world with me. Quite literally, from the Alps, -20, -30 at some points they've lasted me. They're my go-to running boots when I'm going to run most of the trails around here. And I've got the more modern trackers I'm breaking in at the moment. They're still about 6 to 12 months old. They haven't been broken enough for me to be comfortable in running yet, but the grips are pretty much the same. If you look at this, you know, they've been a little bit more worn here over the time, but a similar sort of background. So I wear these. These are my go-to in the mountains running, day-to-day ones. And then yeah, I'm pretty excited to test out the new forest trackers. I've been wearing a little bit around Cardiff just to break them in. These are literally like I've had a day's worth of work in the parks around Cardiff to break them in and make sure they're nice and soft. Because the last thing you want to do in new boots is come out into the mountains with them on, particularly leather and the way they are, because they're just yeah, they're not going to break in. People always complain about hurting their ankles, rubbing or something along those lines. You need to break them in. No matter what you do, you have to break in your boots here. So I've broken them in Cardiff a little bit. It's a little bit damp here now. But I'm excited to try these out today because the grips, look at the difference in grips here. Michelin tire grips, which I'm hoping are going to be more sturdy for more extreme terrain, which I'm really excited about trying out because as well as these, like the grips are also similar on my Tempest ones. My Barefoot trail running shoes. These are my go-to trail running shoes. So I'm excited to try out the new grips on these. They're a little bit thicker, not as thin as Barefoot as you normally like, but I kind of like them on the more extreme terrains to make sure I've got enough grip, particularly here because it's been raining the last few days and it's quite slippy underfoot too. First impressions, they feel good. They're actually really soft, surprisingly soft, considering I haven't really worn them or worn them once. So they're feeling good. They get firm around the top part of the ankle here. I love the lacing system. The lacing system is pretty robust and it's good, firm grip almost. When I get them onto the boots themselves now and pull in, you know, it's a good firm system. But it's nice, soft leather, super soft leather. And like I said, I've only worn them once out and about inside the mean streets of Cardiff, so not really a good testing area, but first impressions, a good rugged lacing system, which is important, and I'll show you why actually, because my boots in the car, I'll show my old ones, you know, 4 or 5 years old, the original lacing started to come off. So good rugged, you know, robust lacing is actually important because you don't have to change them all the time, particularly in extreme conditions. So, you know, compared to my trackers, they're feeling good. They feel comfortable, they're firm. Yeah, excited to try them out really. I want to go and see what happens with them and give the grip test a little go as well. So we're wearing Vivos now for over 7 years, I think it is, to be honest with you. I got into them just in the world of personal training and strength, being a strength coach. The world of fitness, particularly when it comes to health and movement, you need to have strong feet, because in strength training you die from your feet. If you can't grip the ground with your feet, when you're strength training, you're not going to be able to get as strong as what you'd like. You know, you need to put your big toe into the ground to get here. So the world of Vivo, I fell about just because to use them in the gym, like the old classic gym trainers with Vivos, which was absolutely fantastic, which then morphed into my everyday shoes. I don't wear any other shoes now except for Vivos because my feet and my back, my hips feel so much better for it, because the stronger your feet, the more of a stable base you have for the rest of the body, I think is the best way to describe it. And also you need mobile feet, and you know, people wear shoe-shaped shoes all the time, like their feet look like that, whereas they need stability from their feet like this to spread their toes out. So I'm a big fan of it. So in the gym I like to be barefoot as much as I can, but Vivos is the next best option when that isn't possible. But then when it transcended into my day-to-day life, it changed everything. My feet became so much stronger, and over time, and this is the most important thing now, is I do all my trail running and hiking now wearing Vivos and barefoot shoes, but it's taken me a long time to get there. Like,
people need to take time to get into wearing them. You have to wear them in.
Absolutely. So like the first time when I started, I wanted to do barefoot running for the first time, and I put my Vivos on initially. I went for a 20-minute run, and I thought it was fine. My ankles, Achilles, my calf muscles were wrecked for 3 weeks. My feet and my muscles and tendons in my feet and my ankles and my calves just weren't prepared for it. And that was the biggest shock. So I dived in too fast, too soon, which I see a lot of people do when it comes to barefoot shoes. Like barefoot shoes, like for me, I'm hiking now a couple of hours and I wear them all day, every day. It's taken me 7 years to get to this phase. So a lot of people who are going to buy Vivos may jump into going into long hikes too fast, too soon, when they need to take their time and build up slowly with their day-to-day life. So this is the thing. I love these boots. I think they're fantastic boots to wear out and about. But for your health and for your enjoyment, you have to wear your shoes in, and particularly barefoot shoes, to get your tendons, your ligaments, and all the muscles and the bones essentially robust enough so you can handle it. So what's it been? It's been about 2 hours now out on the back of Barefoot here, which is kind of cool terrain actually. It's a good mixture of beginner and intermediate terrain, I suppose, which is going to be ideal for a lot of people here. It's not too steep, it's fairly firm underground. It's slippy today with all the wood and the twigs and branches and roots showing around, but it's giving me a good idea of what to feel like with the boots. I'll be honest, they're pretty comfy. There's no rubbing, so a lot of new boots, they tend to rub around the ankles. I've been okay with them so far, nothing too major. And yeah, they've been really grippy underfoot. Like here's quite soft here, but if I come onto the actual route here, it's pretty slippy. They're still giving me some extra grip whilst moving around and being on them. So far I'm quite impressed. Comfy, sturdy, soft, a lot of give, which you get in a lot of Vivos. You can mold them around a little bit. I've done the running test, which is pretty cool. So the running in them, which is kind of important to me, because I don't just like hiking here. I kind of enjoy the full-blown running experience as well, like walk the uphills, jog the flats, run the downhills as fast as I can, like a little mountain goat. But, you know, so far underfoot, it's been pretty solid all the way around. Again, it's not been in the full extreme terrain yet, but intermediate beginner terrain, where a lot of people I think will be using these boots will be and spend most of their time. I think it's absolutely ideal. A little bit extra grip compared to the trackers makes you a little bit more sure-footed underfoot, particularly people who are a bit nervous maybe in going over rocks or stones or crossing over water crossings. Those type of things may find these a little bit more beneficial. But so far, good thumbs up, feeling comfortable and not much of an issue, to be honest with you.
Cool. And where are you going to now?
I think it's time to go and test them out in the more rugged terrain near Llanidwal, up around there, Llancarnau, around that area, Llynogwen. It's the Carneddau area. It's a little bit like Games of Thrones almost, for all the Welsh words coming out. So I'm in my home and I can speak Welsh here now, and no one starts coughing up lungs or anything at all. But I think, yeah, the testing here is good. I can run in them, I can walk in them, I can hike in them. They're comfy. Considering they're brand new, there's nothing rubbing. But I think the big test will be when I come and test them out onto the more extreme terrain of Snowdonia and Snowdon. I'm on the Glydiau in a few minutes now, so I think we need to go and test them out there to give a proper idea. He fell over. Stop.
Okay, so far, any negative points about the Vivos?
Yeah, actually, one thing which I find quite amusing. This stems back from my police driving days when you were made to wear really thin soles so you can just like feather touch the actual accelerator and the brake as much as you needed to. So I'm wearing the trackers now, the forest trackers, because the grip's so much thicker than the other soles. I'm finding it quite hard to judge the pace of the braking and accelerating. So I'm like either too foot heavy or too brake heavy. So that's my first negative comment so far. So for those who are very particular about driving, I definitely wouldn't recommend driving in them so far.
Oh, hello. So have your mates behind us?
Yeah, the police are behind us now, which is quite funny. But it's beautiful around here. It's funny how we're just 10 minutes down the road from Barefoot and the whole landscape completely changes. So we've gone from being like trees, forests, nice woodland trails to absolute epic scenery and jagged mountains. It's almost like the Alps. Like, you know, it's the Alps of Wales, essentially. I think is the best way to put it. As we come here now, so it's a lot more jagged terrain, a lot more epic, a lot more glacial. So for those who are into geography, You've got the glaciated valleys, the U-shaped valleys, and all the jagged rocks that go with it. So yeah, it's kind of cool to test it out now and see how it fares up.
So why is it important for you to be back in the mountains after the last couple of years we've all had, and how does it make you feel?
Alive, I think, is the best way to describe it. Being in the mountains makes me feel alive. It makes me feel good about myself. It de-stresses me. There's so many mental health aspects for me personally that it just sets me free. It sounds cheesy to say that, but to say with snowboarding, like as soon as I get on top of the mountain and I'm able to descend into the powder, like I just free, I don't care about anything. And that's what I love about the challenge of walking up the mountains, first and foremost, and the freedom of running down them afterwards. I think that's the best way to describe it. It just makes me feel alive, gives me purpose, it makes my training in the gym worthwhile, and it gives meaning to what I'm trying to do. Enjoyment, I think. That's why good equipment, or the best equipment, I think, is important for the enjoyment factor. When it comes to being in the mountains, the last thing you want to be is wet, cold, damp at any given point, because it just is miserable and it gets you cold, it gets you ill quickly, but also at the same time, you just can't enjoy being out here. It's about enjoying yourself as much as possible. So I learned very early on in my career as a snowboarder and out in the mountains and doing seasons that if you don't invest in good equipment, the equipment you do buy lasts you half the season, but you get cold, damp and wet most of the rest of the time, and it takes the enjoyment factor away from it. So I learned you need to invest in good quality equipment. So Arc'teryx, Patagonia, Vivobarefoot, these boots, it wasn't just the quality of the boots, it was the craftsmanship that went into it to keep my feet warm in the snowy, minus 20 degree conditions, but also dry in most of the conditions. Well, these things are pretty dry most of the day. Well, it's wet, slippy, it's been raining quite a lot, so I'm feeling good. I'm enjoying myself out here, and I don't have to worry about being, wet and cold. I think it's the best way to describe it. And it is cool, you can see the difference with the terrain out here. It is so different to Betws-y-Coed, where it's all forestry and green. Here you've got much more jagged rocks. It's a lot more slippy underfoot, and I think this is where the boots come into their own, to be honest with you. This grip, it's a lot better. I think it's designed for this more difficult type of terrain. I don't feel like I'm going to lose my grip anytime soon, particularly with the damp, slippy factor around here as well. So I think it's working out pretty well, to be honest with you. So first impressions on the more jagged terrain is pretty good. We're on a flat ledge here at the moment, but walking up, coming here, getting up higher, it's definitely held it into own. I wouldn't say I'll be running in them today, because it's so wet underfoot, and I don't really want to fall over and slip away, but in the dry, I'd definitely be interested to see how that performs a little bit better.
So what are your thoughts overall? It's the end of the day. What are your thoughts overall on the shoes?
It's crazy. It's been 8 hours in the boots. All in all, we've done Betws-y-Coed, all around the easy trails around there. We've now come up around Llynol Gwen and Glyderau up here in Snowdonia. Two very different terrains. Main thing, my feet are dry. I think that's the best thing to say. It's wet, it's been damp. It's squelchy underfoot. No matter where we've been today, my feet are warm and they're dry and they're toasty. And I'm only wearing fairly thin socks as well. So that's the first thing. The grip has been very good. I'm very impressed with the Michelin grip underfoot, particularly here in the more extreme terrain. I think this is what the boot is designed for, is these more extreme terrains. They're good on the other trails, the easier trails, and they do give you more sure footing. But I think they excel on the wet, slippy conditions here and the more jagged face to give you the stability and the confidence, I think, to walk over certain areas along here. I really want to run in them on this type of ground a bit more. However, it's just too dangerous and it'd be stupid for me to run in it today because it's so wet and slippy underfoot. I'll just end up rolling over and breaking my ankle somewhere. But in the forest, they felt good when running. There's no rubbing. Again, these boots are like a day old. of walking around Cardiff. I haven't broken them in. I don't recommend them. I recommend breaking them in a bit more. This is the first real day on the trails. There's no rubbing along the ankles, no soreness, no stiffness. My feet feel good underfoot, but that could also be why I've been wearing Vivos for quite a long time, so I'm comfortable underfoot. But all in all, I'm very impressed. I think they don't replace my trackers, the original ones. I think they add to them. So I think my trackers are for easy trails, day-to-day living, in and out of mud. They're great. However, these bad boys here, I think, are for these more extreme terrains to hold your feet and give you more stability, ankle support, and everything else on the foot. So for me, 2 thumbs up, 5 stars. Personally, I may be slightly biased, but I've been wearing Vivos and I love Vivos anyway. So just take that with a pinch of salt if you may. But just bear in mind that I've gone out first day 8 to 10 hours on my feet here, and I'm used to being barefoot. So if you're going to buy these shoes, please make sure you warm up gradually into doing this sort of time underfoot and time out in the mountains wearing. So I don't want you to come back and say your calves are hurting or my feet have got blisters or whatever. Just bear that in mind moving forwards. But great choice of shoes, perfect for both intermediates, beginners, and the advanced type of person combined.